You know how they say, it's always the ones closest to you that hurt you the most? I never really believed that, until I met Ada and her best friend Chioma. Their story still plays in my mind like a movie I can't stop replaying. Two women who grew up together, from sharing homework to sharing heartbreaks. They were more than friends. They were sisters in every way except by blood. And that bond? It looked unbreakable. But what none of us saw coming was how one secret, one act of betrayal, would destroy everything they built. It started the day Ada called me, her voice shaking, breath uneven. She said, "You won't believe what Chioma did to me." And the crazy part? When I found out what actually happened, I couldn't even blame her for what she did next. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about hate. It's about showing the person who broke you that you were never the weak one. Ada and Chioma had known each other since they were 12. Same neighborhood, same church, same kind of childhood where dreams were the only escape from struggle. Ada was the quiet one, the type who'd rather listen than talk, the kind who saw the world through feelings, not words. Chioma, on the other hand, had this spark in her. Loud, bold, always smiling like she had life figured out. When they were together, it felt like watching sunlight bounce off water, different but inseparable. They went through everything together. Shared uniforms in secondary school. Shared a bed space in university. Shared secrets they swore no one would ever know. When Ada's mother died during her final year, Chioma was the one who held her through the night. When Chioma failed a course and thought her father would disown her, Ada lied to help her fix her transcript. That was how much they trusted each other, blind, pure, without question. After graduation, life hit them differently. Ada found a small job at a printing company. Chioma got lucky, or at least it looked that way. She landed a position at a new firm in the city, one of those jobs that sounded too good to be true. She moved into a bigger apartment, started dressing better, speaking faster, walking like the world owed her attention. Still, she never forgot Ada. At least, not at first. Every weekend, she'd visit Ada with gifts, clothes she no longer wore, shoes that didn't fit, half-used makeup kits. And Ada would accept them with a grateful smile, not realizing that each gift slowly started to change something between them. Because beneath that sisterhood, something darker was growing: comparison. Ada was still struggling, still taking buses while Chioma rode in Uber rides. Still cooking on a small kerosene stove while Chioma ordered takeout. And yet, whenever they sat together, Ada never let jealousy win. Until the day a man entered their story, and everything started to fall apart. His name was David. Tall, calm, and the kind of man who never needed to talk too much to get attention. Ada met him first. It happened one Sunday morning, just outside the small printing shop where she worked part-time. He'd come to print a set of wedding invitations for his sister. She remembered his gentle voice when he said, "Thank you," after she helped him fix a typo. It wasn't a movie moment, it was simple. But that's what made it special. For the first time in a long time, Ada felt seen. He noticed her in a way nobody had before, the way her eyes drifted away when she was shy, the little nervous laugh she did when she didn't know what to say. They started talking. First about work, then about music, and before long about life. He wasn't rich, but he was kind. He'd bring her lunch sometimes, stay a little longer after picking up printed jobs, and make her laugh when her boss yelled too much. After 3 months he asked her out. She said yes, and for the first time, Ada believed that maybe, just maybe, things were finally turning in her favor. When she told Chioma about him, her best friend laughed, clapped, and said, "Finally, my girl is in love." Chioma even helped her pick a dress for their first official date. That night, Ada looked like happiness itself. Simple gown, small earrings, nervous smile. But what Ada didn't notice was the way Chioma kept asking about him. What does he do? Is he handsome? Does he have friends? At first, it felt like normal curiosity. That's what best friends do, right? But there was something else behind those questions. A glimmer in Chioma's eyes Ada couldn't name. Weeks passed. David met Chioma once, accidentally or so he said. They both ran into each other at a cafe near the city center, where Ada was supposed to meet them but arrived late. When Ada walked in, they were laughing about something. Nothing strange, nothing that felt wrong. Still, Ada noticed how easily they connected. The way Chioma's laughter got louder, the way David's eyes lingered a second too long. She brushed it off. She trusted both of them. But love makes you blind, and sometimes trust makes you foolish. Because what Ada didn't know was that the seeds of betrayal had already been planted that day. The first time Ada felt something was wrong, it was small, almost invisible. David stopped calling as often. The texts came slower, the replies shorter. When she'd ask what was wrong, he'd say, "I'm just tired, work's been crazy." and she believed him. But her heart didn't. You know that quiet feeling in your chest when something feels off, but you can't explain it? That's what kept her up most nights. Then came the day Chioma called. She sounded too excited. Ada. Guess who I just saw at the new restaurant downtown? When Ada asked who, Chioma said, David. You're David. He didn't see me, but he looked good. You didn't tell me he was working around there. Ada smiled, confused but calm. He didn't tell me either, she said. The next day she asked David about it. He hesitated, just for a second, before saying, Yeah, I had a quick meeting there, nothing serious. His tone was casual, but that second of hesitation felt like an earthquake. From then on, small cracks began to show. He'd cancel plans, say he was out of town, but she'd notice he posted something that same night, something that didn't add up. And somehow, Chioma always seemed to know where he was. She'd drop small comments like, David's been looking busy these days, or, you know men, sometimes they get distracted. Each word felt harmless, but they slowly chipped away at Ada's peace. Until one Friday night. Ada was at home, scrolling through her phone, when a picture popped up on her Explore feed, Chioma, dressed in a stunning black dress at a rooftop lounge. And standing right next to her was David. She froze. It wasn't a coincidence. The way they stood too close, the way his arm brushed hers, it said everything words couldn't. Her heart pounded so loud she could barely breathe. For hours, she stared at the photo, refreshing the screen, hoping maybe it would disappear, hoping maybe she was overthinking. But deep down she knew. The next day she called Chioma. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. Were you with David last night? She asked. There was a pause. Then Chioma laughed, the same laugh that used to make Ada feel safe. Ah, Ada. You're being paranoid. We just ran into each other. You know Lagos is small. But it didn't feel small. It felt like the world was closing in. Because betrayal doesn't always start with lies. Sometimes it starts with laughter that hides too much truth. Ada didn't sleep that night. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every laugh, every text. Every night she thought David was too tired to talk. And every time she closed her eyes, that photo flashed again. Chioma's smile, David's hand too close to hers. By morning she was done pretending. She told herself she just needed to confirm. You know that lie you tell yourself right before your world falls apart? That's what she did. That evening she decided to go to David's place, unannounced. She'd been there hundreds of times, she knew his routine and she knew he'd be home. Or at least she thought he'd be. It was raining. Not heavy, just that kind of drizzle that makes the air smell like dust and regret. She stood at his gate for a while, debating whether to knock. But something inside her whispered, do it. When the security man opened, he hesitated for a moment before saying, Madam, Oga no day, or wait. Then he paused. Because right at that moment, a car horn sounded from the corner. It was David's car. And stepping out of the passenger seat, holding an umbrella over herself and laughing, was Chioma. For a second Ada froze. The world went silent. No rain, no cars, nothing. Just that image burned into her memory. Chioma's laughter died the moment she saw Ada standing there. David froze too. His keys fell to the ground. No one spoke. The three of them just stood there, rain falling between them like glass shattering in slow motion. Finally Ada said, I just wanted to know if my eyes were lying to me. Her voice didn't even crack. It was calm, almost too calm. Chioma tried to say something, but Ada lifted her hand. Don't, she whispered. You already said enough when you took what wasn't yours. She turned to David. You could have told me. I would have left quietly. David opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Because how do you explain betraying someone who trusted you without question? Ada walked away. No shouting, no tears. Just silence. And sometimes silence is louder than any scream. But that wasn't the end. Because betrayal doesn't end when you walk away, it begins. And for Ada, the real story started the moment she decided not to forgive. 4 weeks after that night, Ada disappeared from everyone's radar. No calls. No posts. No messages. Nothing. People thought she was broken, but they were wrong. She wasn't broken, she was becoming something else. See, Ada had always been the soft one. The kind who forgave easily, who saw good in people even when they didn't deserve it. But betrayal? It changes your blood. It rewrites your soul. She spent those quiet weeks healing. Not the peaceful kind of healing, but the kind where you replay everything in your mind and learn how to stop crying at the same parts. She didn't want pity. She wanted power. Then one evening, while scrolling through her phone, she saw something that made her pause. A post. Chioma had just announced her engagement. To David. The caption read, "Sometimes love comes from the most unexpected places." Red heart. Ada smiled. Not the kind of smile that says, "I'm happy for you." No, it was the kind that says, "Game on." That night Ada started planning. She wasn't going to fight them with anger, she was going to use their own world against them. She knew Chioma was a rising interior designer, building her brand online, chasing big clients. And David? He had just landed a promotion in a corporate firm that valued image more than anything. Ada's revenge wasn't about ruining them. It was about letting them destroy themselves, slowly. She took her time. First, she started a small catering business. Nothing fancy, just quiet work that kept her close to certain people. But behind that business she built connections. One of her biggest clients turned out to be the same company organizing Chioma and David's wedding reception. Fate? Maybe. Opportunity? Definitely. Ada volunteered to handle the desserts for the event through a mutual contact who had no idea about their history. She wanted to see them again, but this time, not as the broken girl crying in the rain. She wanted to see them as the woman they underestimated, the one they thought would fade away. And when that wedding day finally came, Ada's presence changed everything. But not the way you think. The day of the wedding came with sunshine so bright it almost felt mocking. The kind of day that made everything look perfect. The laughter, the flowers, the smiles, all of it hiding the quiet truth underneath. Ada arrived early wearing a soft cream dress and a calm face. No makeup to hide her scars, no pretense to make her look stronger than she was. Just her, plain, grounded, and peaceful. She wasn't there for chaos. She was there for closure. The hall was beautiful. White roses, gold decor, the sound of slow music floating through the air. Everyone moved around in joy, completely unaware that the woman serving desserts used to be the bride's best friend, and the groom's secret regret. Ada stood by the table, arranging trays of cupcakes with steady hands. Every detail was perfect, just the way Chioma liked things. The thought made Ada chuckle under her breath. "Still the perfectionist," she whispered. Then the moment she'd been waiting for arrived. Chioma entered, radiant in her gown. David followed, looking every bit the successful man he'd become. For a second, Ada felt her chest tighten, not from jealousy but from memory. She could still remember the sound of his voice when he'd said he loved her. The same lips now smiling at another woman. They didn't notice her immediately. Why would they? She was just another face in the crowd now, someone who'd faded into the background of their perfect story. But that was about to change. During the reception, Chioma walked over to the dessert table to take a photo for her Instagram. That's when their eyes met. Time froze. Chioma blinked, confused at first. Then recognition hit her like a slap. "Ada?" she whispered. Ada smiled. "It's been a while." Chioma's expression shifted, from shock to guilt to fear. But before she could speak, David appeared beside her. The color drained from his face when he saw Ada standing there, calm, confident, and composed. "You look different," he stammered. "I should," Ada said softly. "Pain changes people." Then she turned her attention back to the table, as if their presence meant nothing. And that was the moment Ada's revenge truly began. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to cause a scene. All she had to do was exist. Every laugh she shared with a guest, every calm smile, every confident glance. It tore at Chioma and David more than any act of revenge ever could. They couldn't stand how peaceful she looked. How unbothered. David tried to talk to her later, quietly pulling her aside. "Ada, I never meant to hurt you," he said, voice trembling. She looked at him for a long moment. "Then why did you?" He couldn't answer. She smiled again, that same unsettling calmness, and said, "You know, David, sometimes forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. It's about letting yourself walk away without hate." Then she handed him a small cupcake box. "For you and your wife. Congratulations." And she walked out of that hall, head high, heart light, soul free. That was supposed to be the end. But fate, it never forgets loose ends. Weeks passed after the wedding, but the memory of that single encounter refused to fade. For Chioma and David, Ada's calm smile became a ghost that followed them everywhere. At first they pretended nothing was wrong. They went on their honeymoon, posted pictures of beaches and cocktails, and forced themselves to believe that they'd moved on, that Ada was just a chapter closed. But you can't erase guilt that easily. It stains everything it touches. Chioma started to change first. She became jumpy, distracted. Every time her phone buzzed, she flinched, expecting a message, a post, a reminder that Ada was still out there. She started seeing Ada's face in her dreams, the same calm expression, those piercing eyes that didn't need anger to haunt her. One night she woke up screaming, sweating through her sheets. David tried to comfort her, but even his touch felt like a lie now. Every time he said, "I love you," it sounded hollow, like a line rehearsed too many times. Chioma began checking his phone, doubting everything. Maybe it wasn't over between them, she thought. Maybe Ada still had a piece of him. David, on the other hand, tried to drown his guilt in work. But no matter how many hours he spent at the office, the silence of his home always reminded him of what he'd done. Every smile Ada gave him that day replayed in his head, not the smile of forgiveness but of freedom. She had moved on. He hadn't. Then, something strange began to happen. One evening, Chioma received an anonymous delivery at her new office, a small white box tied with a golden ribbon. Inside was a single cupcake. No note. No message. She froze. Her hands trembled as she stared at it, the same cupcake Ada had handed them at the wedding. For a long time she just stood there, heart pounding, before rushing to throw it away. But that night she couldn't sleep. The sight of that box burned in her mind. The next morning she found another one, this time on her doorstep. Again no note. Just a cupcake. Was it Ada? Was she being watched? Chioma started losing her grip. Every noise made her jump, every stranger's face made her second-guess reality. David tried to calm her, but deep down even he couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, this was Ada's quiet way of reminding them that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. But Ada wasn't sending anything. She had moved on completely, focused on her growing business, smiling genuinely again. The cupcakes? They were a coincidence. The guilt? That was Chioma's own creation. And that's the real beauty and horror of Ada's revenge. She didn't have to lift a finger. They were destroying themselves with the weight of what they'd done. It started on a Sunday morning, the kind of morning that should have been peaceful. The sunlight poured through the curtains, the birds outside were singing, and the world felt quiet. But inside that house it was anything but peaceful. Chioma hadn't slept. Her eyes were red, her hair unkempt, and her hands trembled as she clutched a photo of her and Ada, back when things were simple. When friendship meant trust. Before love turned it all into poison. David walked into the kitchen, tie half knotted, eyes heavy. "Chioma, we need to talk," he said gently. She didn't even look up. "I saw her again last night." David froze. "What do you mean you saw her?" "In my dream," Chioma whispered. She was standing outside the house, smiling, not saying anything, just watching. David sighed, trying to sound calm. "Chioma, you need to let this go. Ada's not doing anything to us." But Chioma's voice cracked, a whisper that carried more pain than anger. "She doesn't have to, David. We're doing it to ourselves." She turned toward him, tears streaming down her face. "You lied to me. You lied to her. And now I'm living in a house built on that lie." David tried to reach for her hand, but she pulled away. "You don't get it," she said, her tone rising. "Every time you say you love me, I hear her name echoing behind it. Every time I close my eyes, I see what I did to my best friend. I see her face when she found out." Her voice broke. David stood there, silent, because deep down he knew she was right. That evening something inside Chioma snapped. She couldn't carry the guilt anymore. She needed closure. No, she needed forgiveness. She got into her car, drove across town, and parked in front of Ada's small cafe. The lights were still on, soft music playing through the open window. Ada was there, laughing with customers, apron on, hair tied up, face glowing with peace. For a moment, Chioma just watched her through the window. The sight of her being okay was almost unbearable. Because Ada's calmness was the mirror reflecting all the chaos she'd caused. Finally, Chioma gathered the courage to walk in. The bell above the door rang and Ada looked up. Their eyes met again, just like at the wedding, but this time there was no crowd, no noise. Just two women bound by history. Ada's expression softened. "Chioma," she said quietly, "I didn't expect to see you here." Chioma swallowed hard. "I needed to talk to you. I needed to say, I'm sorry." Ada didn't reply at first. She just stood there, studying her face, the exhaustion, the guilt, the desperate need for peace. Finally she said, "You already said it. You just never used words." Chioma's eyes filled with tears. "Do you hate me?" Ada shook her head. "No. I did for a while. But hating you was like drinking poison and waiting for you to die. I had to let it go." Chioma covered her face, sobbing quietly. "I don't know how to forgive myself," she whispered. Ada stepped closer, her voice steady and kind. "You don't. Not all at once. You live with it and someday, it becomes a part of who you used to be, not who you are." For the first time in years, Chioma exhaled, a long, shaky breath that sounded like release. Outside, rain began to fall softly. Two women stood in silence, finally facing the ghost that had haunted them for so long. No shouting, no anger, just truth. But what neither of them knew, it was that David had followed her there. And what he was about to do next would change everything. David sat in his car across the street, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. Through the rain-blurred windshield he could see them, Ada and Chioma, standing face to face inside the cafe. Two people he had broken. Two people finally finding peace without him. He should have felt relief. Instead he felt empty. 4 weeks he'd buried his guilt beneath work, noise, and denial. But watching them now, the woman he betrayed and the woman he betrayed with, something inside him finally cracked. He stepped out of the car, the rain soaking through his shirt as he crossed the street. The cafe door chimed softly as he entered. Ada looked up first. Chioma turned and froze when she saw him standing there, drenched, exhausted, broken. For a long moment none of them spoke. The rain filled the silence, like the world was holding its breath. "I didn't come to fight," David said quietly. His voice was hoarse, stripped of the confidence it once carried. "I came because I can't keep pretending that any of this was okay." Chioma's face was pale. "David, please?" He raised a hand, cutting her off gently. "No. You need to hear this too." He turned to Ada. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me and I threw it away for something I thought was love, but really, it was just guilt in disguise. I thought running would make the shame disappear. But it followed me every single day." Ada didn't say a word. Her expression was unreadable, calm but heavy with understanding. "I ruined both of you," David continued. "And the worst part is I don't even know who I was trying to protect. Myself maybe. But now I see that I wasn't saving anyone. I was destroying everything good around me." His voice cracked. "I just needed to say I'm sorry." For a while no one spoke. Chioma's tears mixed with the rain dripping from her hair. Ada stood still, her gaze steady, not angry, not forgiving, just real. Finally she said, "David, sometimes the punishment for what we do isn't what others give us. It's what we have to live with." David nodded, slowly, as if every word sank deep into his chest. "I know," he whispered. Then, almost as if the weight was too much to bear, he exhaled, long and heavy. "I'm leaving the city. I need to start over somewhere far away. Maybe find a way to be someone else." Neither of them stopped him. Because sometimes, letting someone go isn't about anger. It's about finally being done with the pain they brought. He walked out into the rain, disappearing into the night. No shouting, no closure, just the sound of footsteps fading away. Weeks later, Ada and Chioma crossed paths again. Not at a cafe, not in pain, just by chance at a small park. No words were exchanged this time. Just a nod. A quiet acknowledgement that the storm had passed, and both of them had survived it. Ada finally felt something she hadn't in years: peace. Not the kind that comes from revenge, but the kind that comes when you stop letting the past own your heartbeat. Some people think revenge means getting even. But the truth? Real revenge is healing so deeply that your silence becomes louder than their betrayal. And that's exactly what Ada did. She didn't destroy them. She simply became someone who no longer needed to. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is peace. Because nothing haunts a betrayer more than watching the one they broke learn to smile again. I know you enjoyed the video, so please subscribe, share and turn on your notifications. Thank you.